So what is performance marketing? Well, essentially, it's an umbrella term that refers to advertising on different channels and paying only when an action is completed. For example, a click or lead or a sale, that would be considered as an action being taken. So you don't pay for impressions, you only pay for the results, the performance of the ad essentially. Remember, when we mentioned affiliates earlier on, performance marketing is very important here. And you would pay affiliates for a specific action being taken, usually a sale. So let's break this down a little bit further. If we set the goal of getting lots of clicks, here we would pay, as mentioned, for those specific clicks, not for the overall impressions made. A place where you could find this, for example, is with Facebook advertising, where you would create an ad and then pay for every time someone, for example, clicks a link to visit your website. Then we have leads. In this case, you would set a CPL cost per lead target and pay for the leads that come in after that. Essentially, you would tell the advertisement platform how much you are willing to pay for a lead. That is a target CPL, which is not always 100% exact as an exact target, but on average, it will match. This is something you will find on Google Ads, for example, where you have smart bidding strategies to target a set CPL. And if this last bit doesn't really make too much sense right away, that's absolutely fine. This is something you will learn to understand throughout the duration of this course. And then we have the goal of sales. Here you would set a target return on investment or return on ad spend. Okay. Very important to understand that. Simply put, the return on investment shows you how much you gain after your investments. For example, if you spend $100 on marketing campaigns and then you get sales of $1,000 after that, your return on investment is 900% and gained 9 times the amount that you initially invested. The ROAS is very similar, but it includes the investment. So in this case, if you invested $100 and gain $1,000 in revenue, you would have an ROAS of 10. For every dollar you've invested, you get $10 back. And just keep in mind that this does not necessarily mean that that is your profit. But these are in some cases just metrics that we would use when it comes to measuring the performance of our sales-related goals. Very important that we understand this concept. True performance marketing encompasses a variety of strategies and analytics. It's not just about sitting at an automated target and then leaving it running. There are some core traits of performance marketing, namely analysis, of course, and whatever means of information you have available. Then optimization, incredibly important because you're optimizing for better performance based on your analysis. Communication. Oh gosh, communication has to be one of the most effective things that we consider in our strategy. And it's effective across all channels and it needs to be. Otherwise, there is no point in our efforts. I think I heard somewhere the other day that even great marketing won't save a bad product. That's essentially it. So you need to make sure that as a business, if you have control over your communication, that is fantastic. And that will definitely set the precedent for your overall company's performance. And then efficiency. And that's obviously referring to quite a few things, but we're going to break each of these things down now as we progress towards the end of this lesson. So stay focused, take as many notes as you possibly can, take a deep breath and just absorb all of this information, just like a blank canvas absorbs some brightly colored paint, ladies and gents. That's the way I need your brains to be switched on right now. In understanding these points a little bit better, we start with analysis. Let's understand analysis in a bit more detail. Well, in order to understand analysis, we need to understand that when we deciphering the information, we use analytical tools, things like Google Analytics, for example, reports that we can get from in-platform as well as third parties. Now, things that you would want to analyze would be your target audience, your marketing platforms, as well as your website. So who you are targeting to, where you are targeting them from, and what you are sending to them. That is information that constantly needs to be analyzed. Then we have the optimization techniques, which are definitely varied, but must always or should always be focused on data and insights. Okay. And insights only come about from looking at the data and analyzing it properly. as well as actually applying some sort of logic and knowledgeable understanding of trends and also different things that contribute to the trends that are unfolding, such as the market sentiment, which is how people feel about certain topics of discussion or different industry trends, for example. We'll actually be looking at insights versus observations in the last lesson of Module 3. So you can definitely look forward to that as it approaches us. And then if we move on to communication, which is so effective across all different mediums, you'll understand that it is vitally important for retention. So keeping your customers happy, which is where communication really comes into play. Whether they are prospective clients or existing clients, communication is absolutely essential to perfect. For social engagement, you need to have proper social media in place, which also aligns itself well with community management policies, etc. So keep that in mind as we get deeper into the understanding of social media engagement. Those have to be there. And then, of course, if you're using email, the communication around that needs to be streamlined. Sending relevant communication, using the best practices, etc. All of those things are vitally important, which is something that we will obviously dive into as we progress into Module 3. You can take that down in your notes so you know what we can be looking for towards that. And obviously, I want you to start thinking now, if you're going to be implementing a new business or communication strategies in your new business or existing business, it's very important to start thinking about where your focus should be right now so that you can elaborate on those details and how they align themselves with your company specifically. It's very important for us to actually understand what our business would benefit from the best. All right. Obviously, social media is quite an aggressive and very diverse way for us to get our business practices marketed and in front of many different people and diverse people for that matter. But obviously, if we have a very specific nature to what we do, email marketing might be better. But this all really depends on what your style of business is. But in today's day and age, just using as many marketing practices as possible in order to communicate efficiently with clients or prospective clients is very important and will certainly benefit you. So don't be too biased towards one specific route. Be as diverse as possible. But I do understand that this is quite specific to your style of business. So just keep that in mind and obviously understand as we progress into Module 3, where we'll elaborate on this a little bit more, how each communication aspect might benefit you more than what the other one might be able to, or obviously where you might want to spend more of your valuable time in perfecting. So just keep that in mind. Finally, efficiency, okay, which is all about logic and adaptation. It is finding solutions to problems, essentially. And that's where what it really comes down to, not just letting it run or letting it go. And also thinking outside the box. It's not just about the marketing channel. That might not always be the problem. It could be the product. It could be the site, etc. And that's what we need to remember as we progress. Then no wasted spend. All right. It's incredibly important. I don't know how many times I've seen a keyword in a Google search campaign where there's been so much money spent and it's completely irrelevant to the business. We need to be strategic, logic, and smart about the word choice that we actually use. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. It's the reality of marketing, but we need to learn from other people's mistakes here and just perfect what we need to focus on in order to be as efficient as possible with our spend. Because yes, these spends could add up to be quite a bit, but if we're really productive, effective, and efficient with our word choices, then we'll definitely be gearing our efforts in the right direction. Then the main considerations in performance marketing, which are essentially what ensures that we can keep those 4 core concepts, is firstly tracking. We need to make sure that tracking is in place. We'll be looking at that in more detail in lesson 2, so the next lesson essentially. But for now, understand also that your budget, of course, is about making sure that we spend efficiently and we spend effectively as well. We want to be smart, but we also want to be effective, right? It's very important that we balance the understanding of those two together. So there is no wasted spend at all throughout our budget. You know, marketing is all about sticking to that budget, but not only just sticking to it for the sake of not overspending, but sticking to it so that we can actually diversify how we use that capital as efficiently as possible. All right. Generally, marketing budgets are quite high for main corporations or big entities. But if you're a smaller business, you really need to keep your finger on the pulse when it comes to being effective with your budget, but you can be very diverse with a small budget, which is what I'll help you understand as we progress through this course. So just keep that in mind. It's not always about saying to clients, I need huge sums of money, right? When actually you don't. It's based on thorough and proper research. That's really what is the most effective thing when it comes to utilizing a budget. Then channel selection. All right. It's very important to understand that this too. That's also about understanding the target market for the target audience, as well as the different channels that are available to you and knowing which demographics are on which channels. Whether the reach maybe outweighs other things like Facebook, for example, that's what it's about. Cleverly choosing your channels to achieve different goals that you have outlined. Then there are also landing pages. And landing pages are the ones that you send to users after clicking on an ad. So literally, the page that a user lands on after clicking on a link from a post or ad. Those need to be optimized, user-friendly, and as fast as possible. It's very important. Once someone has clicked on an ad, essentially the responsibility of the platform is over. Then it's over to your website and your customer service or any kind of internal process that you have in place. Then the competition. And I'm just going to leave that here for now, as we'll go into this in a bit more detail at a later point. But it's just a tip for now. Be aware of the competitors, who they are and what they're up to. In marketing, it's all about the competition. And then volume, right? When it comes to optimizing a campaign, you need to make sure that you have enough volume to optimize with. If, for example, you have targeted 100 people, then there's no point in optimizing because it's not a big enough pool of people to optimize for. So at least 1,000, I would say, in terms of ads, at least 1,000 impressions. Then there are various different types of thresholds that you would look at. It's very important that we understand the perspective of our efforts. So you've created your target market statement. You have some sort of buyer persona perhaps. And now what are the next steps? That's what you need to start thinking of. You always need to start thinking of what's next. Always look into the foreseeable future of what needs to happen next, right? Don't just stop after you've achieved something specific. Always look at what you can do next with the information that you've gathered on hand. You need to look at the customer journey map. Please write that down in your notes. The customer journey map is vitally important. A customer journey is detailed in an outline of every step a lead takes to becoming a paying customer. I'm going to say that again because I'd like you to write that down in your notes. A customer journey is a detailed outline of every step a lead takes to becoming a paying customer. It's a very important point for us to take note of. So when looking at creating a customer journey map, the first thing you need to do is set clear goals. All right. Essentially, you need to ask, what goals are you directing this map towards? Questions are very important when trying to understand something. And what I mean by that is it a newsletter subscription, for example, or is it filling out a lead form or making a purchase or clicking or finding out your directions? Very important questions to ask indeed. You can't combine all your different goals and interactions into one because then it will just look absolutely crazy and of course just confuse you. So you need to ask, who is it all about more specifically, and what experience is it based on? Are they visiting your website directly, or is it at first through your social media? This is where touch points actually come in, and this is what we're going to talk about right now. You need to list your touch points from view to sales, so essentially from the beginning of them being exposed to your brand to a final sale. Touch points are all the places on your website, your marketing and your content channels that your potential customers can actually interact with. You need to list all the touch points that they're currently using, as well as the ones that you believe they should be using. Now, I'm going to go through a few examples just to explain this in a bit more detail and give you a clearer understanding of how it all works and integrates. Let's say a potential buyer sees one of your ads, searches for the product and sees an ad, right? She visits your website and browses through your products and puts them in her cart. She then fills out her information and then makes a payment for which she has received confirmation for. A few days later, her purchase is delivered and she gives a review based on her experience. Sometime later after that, she receives an email with a discount and then she chooses to use that discount. Then she goes on to clicking on the link and leading her to the landing page that she needs to find herself on in order to use that discount code and shop for more. She then logs into that profile that she already created off her first purchase, and adds the products to her cart with a discount applied. This would be a customer journey, a very clear example of a customer journey, all right, with the different touch points included. So when a customer is interacting with us, that entire journey from start to finish would be something like this, and would be identified as the concept of a customer journey. If we can track every single part of that customer journey, then we'll be able to optimize it. And optimization is absolutely crucial when it comes to digital marketing. So we can streamline the process, make it faster, make it more enjoyable, easier, and also just retain the client throughout the entire process a bit more too. Essentially, we want to then just focus on how we funnel the client from start to finish. And if we can optimize this perfectly, then each time a new customer interacts with us, we'll be able to really help define the journey that they're going to be embarking on a lot more effectively and efficiently, of course, as we mentioned, but also just make sure that we retain them for more future sales and more future interest in the services that we might be able to offer too. It all just works through a chain reaction in our business offering. The next thing that usually comes up with customer journeys is marketing sales funnels. So what are they? Well, marketing funnels are a collection of stages that you ideally want potential customers to move through towards your key objective. It's called a funnel due to the volume of potential customers decreasing further down the funnel you go. But what does that even mean? If you think about it, is it every purchase made without thinking about it beforehand? Well, the resounding answer is an absolute no. We are not all impulsive 100% of the time. So then the next thing to think about is, what does thinking look like, and how does it actually change our overall behavior? Right? That's something to really think about here. What kinds of things change? Well, firstly, information that we look at actually changes. How we look at it changes too. And then where we look also changes. This should sound slightly abstract to you right now, but just bear with me for a second. I'll demonstrate with a proper example. So why do we need marketing sales funnels? Well, it allows us to plan specifically and obviously bring a certain traffic in that we need in order to have our measurables. But how we manage leads to how we'll convert those leads into customers. And obviously, how